it's Dawn Ross. I'm coming at you today with a tutorial of sorts, something to think about. So each of us has tissues that are more compliant and tissues that are less compliant or possess more stiffness, okay? And we want to make sure that we can create enough compliancy to do the movements we want to be able to do. We also need to have enough stiffness through our system to be able to make shape changes at different speeds. So the reason I got thinking about this was I had a client this week, and he during the assessment he did the toe touch, and he could like palm the ground. He runs and likes running. He doesn't run super long distances, but likes to get out for 8 to 12 kilometers, like 4 or 5 times a week. Just finds it does his mind great things for his mind and enjoys how it feels. He feels like his hips are tight. But obviously if he can palm the floor, there's tons of flexibility. What I noticed in the toe touch was that this part of his back flexes a lot, okay? So his knees would be locked out, and then there'd be a lot of flexion kind of here, and he was very flat, sort of bottom of the ribs up to the back of the skull, and felt it all sort of behind his knees and in that part of his back that flexed a lot. So I asked him to show me a stretch that he does when his hips feel tight or uneven that helps them feel better. It's usually the right hip, okay? Now, the tightness and unevenness that he feels in his hips is, part of being human. I've talked about it before, in that there's a natural asymmetry that exists in all of us, and walking around being a pressure system. So the reason we inhale is there's biological and chemical reasons, but there's also pressure reasons. So when the pressure outside of us is greater than the pressure inside of us, we will draw a breath in. And when the pressure inside of us is greater than the pressure outside of us, we will exhale to come in, relationship with our environment, okay? And so part of that breathing mechanism is because of pressure. That pressure also then when we breathe, because our internal organs all have weight and mass, it sets us up to bias being able to really get an inhale on the left, but having to work a lot harder to get the diaphragm on the right to descend, and also the pelvic floor on the right. And then it's easier for the right diaphragm to ascend on an exhale and harder for the left because it runs into our heart, which is above the diaphragm. So all this to say is like showing up with this classic asymmetry. So the stretch he showed me that he likes doing, and it kind of gets his hips where he likes to feel it, but it's kind of just temporary, and it doesn't feel like, there's no relief kind of afterwards. And it was more of like a brain niggly thing. So he liked to come into this position and then fold forward, but he could like fold all the way forward and get to the floor. So tons of flexibility. But again, the spine was very flat, kind of bottom of the rib cage to the back of the skull, and very flexed here. So what I said was like, let's set up in this position and face the wall. So I had him set up in that position and face the wall. And be close enough to the wall that he could get his hands on the wall, and then he could start to hinge forward, so he starts to feel the teeniest of stretch in the place in his hips where he likes it, but then to resist and press the wall away, so he creates this kind of isometric and internal tension, and then to take that top shin and knee and press it towards the floor. And then I wanted him to move his sternum away. So he gets a bit of rounding further up in the spine. And just take 5 breaths here. So inhaling and exhaling. So then he felt different things stretching, just holding those isometrics, not at end range, and breathing. And then I had him do the other side. What was cool is then I had him get up and do the toe touch again, and his eyes got really big, and he was like, whoa, that felt so different. He didn't palm the floor, but more of his spine was participating. He didn't just feel it in his hamstrings, okay? So all this to say is what I want to encourage you to do and explore this next week is take a movement that, a stretch where it's really easy for you to kind of get into end ranges of, where you've got lots of compliance in certain tissues. And I want you to back it up and explore creating some co-contraction, co-activation, this like isometric tension in a range backed way off of end range, and then just breathe there, okay? Seeing if you can expand some areas that are typically more compressed, and where you can generate a sense of tension in some areas that typically are very expanded or super compliant. And then come back and recheck, say, your toe touch or your standing rotation, and notice what has changed. Sometimes we need to teach our system how to have more stiffness across joints and not more compliance. So just something to think about. I want you to explore that this week. Pick a position. I'd love for you to either email or post in the comments what you discover. Reach out with questions. If when you watch this video you're not really clear on what you might want to explore, if you don't know what to explore the movements I just demonstrated in the video, if there's like a stretch that comes to mind. While I'm thinking of this particular individual, I wanted to talk through something that they noticed in down dog. So their down dog, not a big surprise. I kind of knew what it was going to look like based on their assessment toe touch. And that was legs straight, all the flexion in that spot in their lumbar that they liked, right? Because the pelvis was kind of tucked under, and then very flat through that upper thoracic area. So here's how we kind of tweaked and played with that down dog to get them more stiffness where they needed it in co-contraction, and more suppleness in those areas that felt sticky, that they didn't actually know felt sticky, but the breath then could do its magic. So this is what their initial down dog kind of looked like. So you have a visual, and then I'll walk you through what I did and why. So it came up really like he has way more flexibility or less stiffness through the legs than I do. So heels were like ankles very dorsiflexed, and then I don't even know if I can do it, but it was all through these vertebrae here were just like rounded, okay? So had them get close enough so when they came up, their heels were gonna hit the wall, kind of push their toes into the floor, exhale the ribs back, lift the breastbone, reach the arms. So they started to get some flexion through and protraction of the scapula, okay? Keeping all that, then reaching the hips up. As I said, keep your knees bent. Find the wall, and like you're gonna try to push your heels through the wall and bring your belly to your thighs. Okay? And then keep the sternum, breastbone lifted and reaching away. So their legs were like trembling because all of a sudden they're being asked to work
at this length rather than just hanging off the length of their tissues. Okay, they then got out of that rounding of the low back, and I just had them do 5 breaths and then come out. And they felt like it was a lot more work in their lower body and their upper body than what it had been before. But also when they got out and then they were just breathing, they could feel other tissues kind of moving with that breath that don't typically move. Yeah, so hopefully that didn't confuse you more, and it's giving you some things to kind of think about, chew on, and play with. And we can definitely dig into this, those of you that kind of explore the invitation to play with a familiar stretch and back it off the end range and find some co-contraction and co-activation for yourself. We can talk about it on our member meetup at the end of the month. Okay, bye for now.